Hello and welcome back to Strabane Community Unemployed Group. This week I have Stephen Birkett with me. Stephen is involved in the talking newspaper in Strabane. Stephen is a retired teacher. Stephen is an author.
Hello, I'm Stephen Birkett, and I have lived in Strabane since 1973, although from my accent I'm sure you can tell I'm not born and bred here.
He's not a local.
I was born in, I was actually born in Blackpool, but we lived in a small village about the size of Donna Manor outside Blackpool. And I came here straight after university to teach in Milltown Strabane Grammar School. And I have been involved in several community organisations. At the moment, the only thing I'm involved with is the talking newspaper for the blind, which I run. I got roped into that 40 years ago. In fact, it's almost exactly 40 years since the talking newspaper started. And
What exactly is this, Stephen?
Well, the talking newspaper, we meet weekly, or we used to meet weekly, and read from the Strabane Weekly News, the Strabane Chronicle, and record what we've read. And then it's put onto, it used to be a cassette tape, and posted out free to people who are blind or with visual handicap. Nowadays, we do it at home. And what we do is, or what they do, I have 4 teams, 4 reading teams.
Okay.
And each team reads once a month. And then they do it at home on their own laptops, and then they email me the recording. I then put it onto a CD, and on a Friday morning take it to the council offices and copy it and post the CDs out to people in the area who are either blind or visually handicapped, although there are a couple of people that we send it to who are just unable to read for other reasons.
Yes. Yeah. And is it from cover to cover?
No, we just read sample items. We usually about between half an hour and an hour reading, mostly news items. We don't do sport or adverts or anything like that. Okay. But I say we've been doing that for 40 years on and off. Well, on because we are one of the very few talk newspapers that kept going through the pandemic, because we could do it at home, and that we were, rather than having to meet up to record.
Yeah.
And a lot of the talk newspapers in Northern Ireland closed down during the pandemic, unfortunately, but we kept going.
Yeah,
so we're quite proud of ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. It's a community group or charity that you're working with as well too. Is First Strabane Scouts, your neighbours?
Well,
you're also the chairman for.
Yeah, a couple of years, but that's a very light duty. I just go to meetings about 4 times a year for about an hour. It's not very onerous, really. Yeah. I have had nothing to do with Scouts since I was about 12.
Your brother is a Scout leader still?
My brother, all my brothers were Scout leaders at some point, yeah. But I was the one that never had anything to do with Scouts, other than attending as a kid. Yeah. But my youngest brother is still a Scout leader in Blackpool.
Okay.
I used to go out with the Northwest Mountaineering Club for years. I used to do that, yeah. Every Sunday out in Donegal, usually. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed that. It was a very nice community, but I sort of faded away from that a little bit. I think when I started doing the Duke of Ed at school, because I ran the school's Duke of Edinburgh's Award Gold scheme for about, must be over 20 years. Well, you know yourself.
Yeah, I know. I did my bronze. Well, I did my bronze at Scouts, and then I did started my silver, and then bailed out of my silver hike legendarily.
It was gold. Tim,
yeah,
it was that you were doing with me.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Well, I bailed out of my gold hike then, legendarily. So the first question then was, where did you grow up and how did that affect who you became?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I grew up in this small town called Poulton-le-Fylde, which is outside Blackpool.
Give us that name again, Stephen.
Sorry?
Give us that name again.
Poulton-le-Fylde.
Okay.
It's about...
Sounds posh, Stephen.
It is. Yeah.
Very open and honest admission there, Stephen.
Yeah. We weren't posh, but, Rolls Royces in every other drive sort of thing. It really is. Very middle-class village, really, and had a fairly sheltered life, and went to a nice school in Blackpool, and
then decided to come to Strabane.
I was at university in Lancaster, and oddly, I had no intention of becoming a teacher. I really wanted to work in a zoo or something like, or a nature reserve or a conservancy or something like that.
What did you teach, by the way?
Biology. Yeah.
Okay.
So when I applied for jobs, they said we need somebody with teaching experience. So I thought, wow, I'll do a teacher training course and then get a couple of years experience and then apply for these jobs. So I did my course, and I got my teacher's training qualification, and I started applying for jobs, and I applied for this job in Scotland, and they invited me for an interview. So I went to the library to check where the town was, and I opened the atlas and looked, and I thought, that can't be right, that's Ireland. It was Strabane. And so I thought, well.
So the job that you applied for in Scotland actually wasn't in Scotland,
yeah.
Stephen?
And then, I mean, bizarrely, I should have known, because at the time my boyfriend was actually from Northern Ireland.
Okay.
So, and that was another funny story. So anyway, I thought I'll go over for the interview. I don't have to take the job. So I got the ferry over to Larne or Belfast. I can't remember where the ferry went to in those days. Got the train to Derry, or Londonderry as they called it. And I thought, this is so beautiful. I've never seen anything like it. And then I got there was a guy on the train, and he said, where are you going? And I said, Strabane. He says, I'll take you to he got a taxi and took me to the bus station. And then I got a bus, and there was a guy in the bus that was chatting to me, and he was so friendly, and everybody was so friendly. I thought, it's quite nice here. I'll stay for a couple of years. I ended up teaching in the school for 40 years.
There you go. That's how we catch people, Stephen. My father was the same.
So yes, but that was the other thing. I'd just come out as gay before I came here, as I say, and my boyfriend was from Castlereagh.
Okay.
So he offered to put me up before I came to Strabane to start work. And I was talking to his mum and dad, and they said, where are you from? And I said where I was from. He said, we used to live there. And it turned out that this guy and his family had just lived in the next street to us in the small village in Polton.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Bizarre.
Yeah.
And in fact, we'd gone to the same primary school.
There you go.
Just strange. So yes, I arrived in Strabane, and I didn't realize how different attitudes to homosexuality were here.
Still very much a sheltered
Well, absolutely. I mean,
part of the UK, or
I know,
sheltered part of Ireland, really. So
yeah, it was. I mean, 1973. It was still illegal, with possible punishment, life imprisonment if you were caught. You know.
Really.
Yeah.
And was that a unique law to Northern Ireland still, or was that?
No,
Obviously not
it
UK
wasn't.
wide.
Scotland was the same,
Okay.
and the Isle of Man was the same.
Okay.
And of course, I didn't realise that. So the first thing I did when I got here was I went to Coleraine University, and went to the Students' Union. They hadn't opened yet, and I went into the Students' Union, and there was a meeting going on organising Freshers' Week, and I said, I want to find out about the gay society here. And you know that proverbial, you could have heard a pin drop. Everybody. And then this guy took me aside and says, we don't talk about that sort of thing here. Okay. So that was my first introduction to the attitudes here. So
when did that law change? So when did
the
it
law
come in line
changed
with-
here in, I think it was 84, 85, something like that.
Okay. And
So-
were there people still being like? Was it enforced? Was it?
Occasionally, yes. I mean, I do know somebody in Strabane who went to prison. I didn't realize it was so oppressive. And so I contacted Cara Friend, which was a gay helpline in Belfast. And actually, it wasn't even a helpline in those days. It's just a letter service.
Okay.
So I wrote to them, and I subsequently discovered that I was the 6th person that wrote to them. Anyway, they wrote back, and I said, "Oh, can you come to Strabane?" They said, "No way, we don't. You'll have to come to Belfast."
Yeah.
And then they wrote back and said, "It's amazing your writing." In those days, they said, "Well, we're all going to Portneuf for the weekend. We could call in with you on the way through." So they did, and then they said, "Would you like to come with us?" So I did. So that's how I got. And then I used to go down nearly every weekend to Belfast.
Okay.
And that's how I got involved in Car a Friend, because they set up a telephone service on a Sunday afternoon in Doug Sobey's flat, which is where I stayed. And I used to answer the phone and talk to people who rang.
Okay.
And then if people rang from the Northwest, I'd arrange to meet up with them and talk to them. Yeah. But there wasn't anything I could offer them, because there was absolutely nothing here. If they didn't want to go to Belfast, there was no social outlet.
Okay. And Derry now has
Gay friendly.
Gay friendly. Well, again, I was going to say something along the lines of it's the San Francisco of of Northern Ireland, or Ireland is.
Yeah, things have changed enormously since those days. I was working with the Belfast group for a long time, and then there was a group of people met up in Derry, and they wanted to start up a helpline in Derry, and I was put in touch with them. So
is there still a project on Queen Street?
No, it wasn't Rainbow. Okay. It was Car a Friend, and it was, I think, we started in either 1979 or 1980, and there were 6 of us running the helpline in Derry, and that actually went on for 20 years before it shut down, and then Rainbow sort of basically took over, and they do what we did.
Okay. And is that still up and running? Is that still
Rainbow? Yes. Oh yeah, Rainbow's still there. When Car a Friend shut down in Derry, I sort of drew back a little bit, and I didn't really want anything to do with it. But then I thought, maybe Strabane needs something. So I set up an LGBT group in Strabane.
What year was this?
Oh, God. I think it was 2006. And we got funding. Oh, it was Paul Gallagher, Councillor Paul Gallagher, helped us. He said to me that there was funding available for community groups, and he helped me apply for a grant from Neighbourhood Renewal.
Yeah.
And they gave us a grant to run an LGBT group in Strabane. We actually had an office on the railway road for a while.
Yeah.
And it just never took off. I don't know why people didn't go to it. Maybe it was just too soon.
Okay.
But that ran for about 3 or 4 years, I think. Okay. So then a few years later, Rainbow set up a group in Strabane. They had a couple of groups, actually. They had a youth group and an adult group. And I used to attend that, and I was sort of, I was officially a sort of representative of Rainbow for that group. But then their funding went, and that closed down. Okay. So, but there is actually a small LGBTQAI group in Strabane now. They meet monthly, okay. And it's mostly trans and non-binary people in the group now. Only, I think, well, as far other than me, I think there's only one other actual gay person in this. It's good because in the way that gay people, when I was young, were excluded, the way gay people were discriminated against in the past. Marginalised, yeah. That's what happens to trans people now. Okay. And I'm not a trans person, and I'm 50 years older than all the people that go to the group. Yeah. It is important that I do go because
But you're still sharing your experience as well, too.
Yes.
You've essentially been in the same place that they are now. So
yeah, exactly. So I mean that's the story. But over the years, yeah, I think I've done a lot of work with the LGBTQAI community, and I feel that I've helped a lot. I mean, attitudes in Strabane have changed so much. I was just talking to a young friend the other day about this, and he says, gay people don't need a group anymore. Everybody accepts gay people, and I think that's true.
That's it's like the new norm, though. You know, it's it's not, and this is why some people think that it's not an issue. As I'm sure that person is trying to sort of get the same message across, that for all intents and purposes, it's not, because even now, definitely the attitudes of the younger people, the younger generation, stuff.
Absolutely,
like, it's wide open. Do you know what I mean? It's as my wife was trying to explain to me recently, that her understanding is that the way that the kids look at each other now as well too is that you fall in love with the person, not necessarily whether they are male or female or non-binary or whatever. So you simply, it's like whereas within our own mindsets of generations in the past, it's been very much considered, but you're either going to be sort of interested in boys or girls, or you know, so it's not. Whereas now,
which is how it should be.
Yeah. So it's kind of, which I thought was a nice way to sort of.
Although you know, there still are going to be people who maybe come from a fundamentalist Christian background or a Muslim background, for whom coming out is not possible, and I don't know how you reach those people. I mean, I know of one person who was from a fundamentalist Christian, Free Presbyterian background, who came out as gay, but he didn't come out as gay in so much as he never told his family, and he just left Strabane and lived his life elsewhere. And then when he came back, he was just a upstanding young man, you know. So there still are problems for people, but getting through to those people, I don't know.
But there's not, obviously there is, it's not against the law anymore. It's not.
No, gosh, no. Yes, I mean, when I was first teaching, I was terrified of any sort of police activity, you know, and obviously as a teacher, you could lose your job very easily.
Something else to move on to. So Stephen also is a novelist, a writer, and has had 2 books published, 3 books published, 4 books published. How many books, Stephen?
6.
Says Stephen has had 6 books published, as he's just pointed out.
Yes, and the first one is actually about a teacher and a policeman having a relationship, and how back in the 70s and how problematic that would have been in those days.
And that was turned into a play,
a film, a short film, or part of it was, that's right. It was shown in the Alley in 2019, would you believe?
Yeah,
quite successful in its own day.
Okay. Yeah. And how did you feel about that? How did you feel about that, Steve? Did you feel elated? Did you feel as if
it was a very interesting process?
You had arrived. You had a new chapter in your life, and you.
It was nice. It was interesting because it was a friend, a former pupil actually, who was studying at film college in England, and he decided to make the book into a film for his final year project. And he actually stayed in Strabane for the year, and he and I worked on it together. We worked on the script, and we worked on locations and recruiting volunteers for the actors and all that sort of thing. And it was an interesting process. I enjoyed it. I ended up having to act in it myself, which was a bit annoying, because the guy who was going to take my role, what was it wrong? Oh, he didn't look old enough. That was right. That was the problem. Yeah, he didn't look old enough. It was supposed.
Is that not called a cameo, Stephen? Whenever you
maybe that's what it was.
The author appears in.
But I had a few misgivings about it, in that the guys that were making the film were in their early 20s, and it was very difficult for them to imagine what actually it was like for people in the 70s. And particularly the lead actor was playing it as a young Derry gay man from the present, and whereas he was supposed to be a sort of like a farming boy from County Londonderry in the 70s. So to me, it grind a bit, but people watching it thought it was great. So it was fun.
Very good, very good, very good. And are there any more things like that on the horizon? Any more opportunities for your work to become?
No, nothing really at the moment. I might. I'm going to be traveling a lot this year in the autumn, and I'm thinking if I get ideas, I might try and write something else. But I haven't. No ideas pop into my mind.
So so your first book was sort of what can you say, semi-autobiographical?
No, not really. It was certainly based on my own experiences, but to call it semi-autobiographical would be stretching it. So I have not nearly as an adventurous life as my character did.
But so your second, third, fourth, and fifth, and sixth books were about?
Well, basically, I took the same characters through. The first was set in the 70s, second in the 80s, third in the 90s, fourth in the noughties, fifth in the teenies, and the last one was set in this decade, although it referred back to the 50s, 40s and 50s as well.
Like an origin thing, was it?
No, not really. It's a bit difficult to explain, but it was set during the pandemic, and one of the characters found a set of diaries of a gay man from the 1950s and 40s and 50s, and he starts tracing the life of the gay man and discovers connections with his life. So it was.
It does sound interesting. And have you done an audiobook of these? Have you done?
No, I haven't. No.
You did the first one.
I did, yeah, the first two actually, because I had a friend who couldn't read, and so I did audiobooks for him. I've never bothered doing any more.
In fact, I do obviously listen to a lot of audiobooks. I'm dyslexic, so there's nothing better than getting the author to read their own book, because you get it's like a pure thing. Whereas sometimes if you get somebody who's reading somebody else's work, obviously it's a bit of a it does sound like there's a bit of a distance, or maybe they're over dramatic or under dramatic or whatever. So if you're sort of kind of getting it from the horse's mouth, Stephen,
it'd be quite difficult for me to do it because it's all set in Northern Ireland and I've got an English accent.
Well, but if it's semi-autobiographical,
even so.
So we're only the second question then. What was your first impression of Strabane and the community here?
When I first arrived? Well, when I first arrived, I was teaching at the grammar school, which is a state grammar school. And so all the people that I was mixing with were from the unionist community. And I didn't really know anybody in Strabane itself. They tended to socialise outside Strabane, orange halls for dances and pubs in places like Victoria Bridge,
Straw,
Newton Stewart, those sort of places. Yeah, exactly. So, my first impressions were of a fairly privileged group of young people, sort of with disposable incomes and nice cars, but living in a sort of strange parallel world to Strabane itself.
Strabane's quite working class, obviously, at that time.
Yeah, exactly. And then I discovered Felix's Bar, and that became a regular place for me. And that's when I began to meet people from Strabane and a completely different group of people. And so gradually my friendship group shifted and became more based in Strabane. Yeah. And I mean, some of the people I met in those days are still friends 50 years later, you know. Yeah. What have I noticed? Well, I mean, I really like the people in this town. I find them really nice and friendly. Yeah. Obviously, there are exceptions, but... and oddly, you know, being English was never really a problem for me in Strabane. I don't. I think I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of times I've had hostile, reactions for being English. I mean, one guy thought I was a soldier, so he wasn't very happy.
Yeah.
I think his brother had just been put in prison, and he nutted me.
Okay.
But
It's back in the 70s, 80s.
yeah. Generally, people in Strabane were far more accepting of me as a gay person as well.
Yeah.
The other lot had been a lot more wary, and there's that sort of fundamentalist attitude to gay people.
Okay.
And it's interestingly, many years later, 40 or 50 years later, I had a message from one of them who is long left the town, apologizing for the way they behaved towards me in those days.
Really?
Yeah. I was just a bit too advanced for that community.
Well, exactly, yeah.
But
ahead of your time, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I did have problems in Strabane. There were yobbos, kids who thought that...
To your credit, though, Stephen, sort of kind of knowing you in the background of my life growing up in Strabane, but I mean that you've never seemed to sort of kind of shy away from any of those, what could you say, annoyances or... I'm sure for you, very annoying and upsetting times.
I don't know
people
why. I don't consider myself as a particularly brave person, but it was just one thing. I just felt it was important to be myself, even at school. And
even where you live, though, in so much as that you're still in town, and you're still very accessible. Whereas, for example, you could have taken off to the hills and said, "Yes, I'm going to go."
No. I just
off
thought
to the coast, or
I'm no great. What do you call? I wouldn't be.
A martyr?
No, I wasn't going to say that at all. No, I wouldn't say I'm a very special person, but I thought just by being myself and not hiding the fact that I was gay, I was possibly doing some good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't really see the results of that. But when I retired, I got quite a lot of messages from former students, people who had long left the school, and one theme that came up over and over was how much they appreciated having an openly gay teacher and how it helped them open their minds to, people. One particular person said that she's teaching in a school in England. She says, the teachers there are so homophobic. Yeah. I hope that by being myself, I've done some good.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. So number 3, what changes have you seen in the community while you've been here?
Well, I've said that, the change in attitude to the LGBT community. More...
So, but you, I think you were saying too as well at the start that you didn't really feel as if there was a lot of homophobic feeling already.
No, but people were quite... people weren't openly gay in the community, but now they are. Yeah.
And so it's become normalised.
Yes, exactly. Sort of so obviously there's that. Though there wasn't, other than those yobbos, there wasn't open homophobia, no. But also the fact that the sectarian thing has faded as well. I mean, that's very good to see. I don't think, especially young people, think in that way anymore. When I was first here, some of the things that some of the young people that I mixed with said about Fenians, was awful. And then I met people in the pub, from the nationalist community. I've never met an orange bastard, and all that stuff. But I don't think people think like that anymore. Maybe they do, but if they do, they don't say it to me.
No. Well, I grew up here in the 80s and the early 90s, and friends that I had who travelled, who would have been from the Protestant community, went over to the mainland, as they called it, and they were very, very shocked and surprised to be told "Hello, Paddy," and they were like, "No, but we're." I'm one of you. And the barman saying, no, Paddy, it's a Guinness then, is it? So I think, but which is actually a very sobering thing for them, because once they then came back, they realised that they were more like us than what they were definitely like the English. Do you know what I mean? So again, that was...
But what else have I seen here? Other changes. I mean, the poverty, it's awful. I mean, it really is. I'm privileged because I was in a good job. Yeah. I've got a good pension. I've been retired 11 years, nearly 12 now. Okay. And as I say, I've got enough to live on, and I'm happy enough, and I can travel. But you see people in this town who are struggling from day to day, and it really shocks me that it's so difficult to make a living. Everything's so expensive. Rent's expensive. Food's expensive. Pay is so awful.
Yeah.
You know, I see more now than I did before.
Whenever you came to Strabane way back in the 70s, Strabane would have been labelled then at that point the unemployment black spot of Europe. Mm-hmm. So there was, I think, 40% male unemployment at the time. But although statistically, now Strabane's unemployment is down to maybe 4% or 3%.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, people that can't get full-time jobs, all the jobs are part-time.
Yeah.
And that's really very difficult. I mean, how people live, I don't know.
Yeah. It's like smoke and mirrors. You know, you look in. So,
right.
And I think that's what's happening here, Stephen. So that idea of don't pay people very much, but let them still think that they should afford these things is really what's happening. So, you know, everything's getting sort of kind of pushed up and up and up and up, and it's all debt. It's not. There's no. So the people who don't work as well, because again, you've a lot of people with the attitude of, well, he doesn't work, but he can still afford. He doesn't work, but he can't afford, but he's just going into debt.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so that sort of kind of, my, as I say, pocket sort of kind of notion is that. And your hopes for the group that you're in the future?
Well, the Talking Newspaper is the only group really I'm involved in now. And I can't actually see it lasting much longer because our readership, our listenership is dropping constantly. I mean, we had 2 deaths last month, you know, and they're not being replaced. People aren't coming on board to get the Talking Newspaper. So my hopes are that it continues until we don't have any listeners left.
Well, the other things, I don't know how afraid these people would be with the internet and stuff like that, but you could do something along the lines of this, Stephen. Like, for all intents and purposes, you could have
I did think of
a
that
discussion around. It's just for our listeners who obviously are listening and not seeing. Stephen's sitting here in our upstairs room, our PC lab, where we have our podcast stuff set up. We've got 4 mics, so we could have 4 guests being interviewed. You could have, like as they do in the BBC, you could have the papers with you and go from sort of kind of article to article and record an hour or so, and then
the problem with that is I did look into that, and I think legally we're allowed to do the Talking Newspaper, but not online, unfortunately.
Okay. So it's not really been an issue recording the audio and sending it out, but it would be if you're essentially publishing it and broadcasting
exactly,
it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The hopes for the LGBTQ community in Strabane, well, Rainbow was supposed to be setting up a youth group again in Strabane, which they had some years ago.
Okay.
So I would hope that would get going. There was in the academy at one point, but I don't know if that's still going. And
I was going to ask actually, is there an age
for the LGBT
for
group?
the
Yes, 18.
18, okay.
Yeah, but the youth group is I think 14 to 18. I think. And the youth group would have to have a qualified youth worker running it, you know, whereas the older group is just volunteers, you know. The older group, I don't know how, hopefully it keeps going. We haven't met for a couple of times for various reasons, but hopefully they'll be meeting again next time. Yeah. And
so again, part and parcel of this, I am here as the Digital Hub Coordinator, and we are trying to build up a digital archive of interviews and this podcast and stuff. So again, with as I say the tapestry of Strabane. So that's why we've had people. We had Anne Smith recently, another retired teacher who works very closely with the church group in Bowling Green, and she's our scout leader, our group scout leader.
Just been awarded an MBE.
Has she just been awarded MBE?
Yeah.
Very good.
The
Breaking news, Stephen.
The King's birthday honours on Friday.
I haven't heard that. I'm meeting
heard
that tonight. I
that?
see the scout also. Later. There we go.
She said she was pretty gobsmacked.
Absolutely. Well, no, she has definitely earned it. I mean,
Oh,
again,
absolutely.
Anne has been. I've just retired myself out of scouting, you know, Stephen.
Yeah.
And Anne's been there long before me, and I'm sure will be there long after. So, I did 15 years, and was my ran out of steam. So, again, she's done both Cubs and Beavers, and been group scout leader. So
She's amazing.
you know, absolutely.
She really is amazing. And it's not just Scout, she does it so many other things.
Yeah, no,
Have you interviewed her?
She has. She's been
All
on.
right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you could talk for an hour and a half on what she does.
Yeah, and funnily enough, we spoke like as you did with Perpetua before you came on. People are so disarmed whenever they arrive first, and you can nearly have a podcast if you know what I mean. Because and those conversations are sometimes they're a bit more serious or a bit more whatever. But that's another element to it. So now we'll hopefully sort of broadening this project out a bit further. So. The one last question then, Stephen, is what piece of advice would you repeat, or what's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Very simple. Be yourself.
That is a beautiful piece of advice, Stephen. I was chatting to somebody recently in Lifford, and myself would sometimes wonder as well, where I am in life and what I should be doing and whatever, and all these bits and pieces everybody does. That's all I have to do. So no, Stephen, that's perfect. You know, at what stage in your life did you hear that? What stage in your life did you get that?
I don't know. I think it was when I was first at university, and I was thinking, who should I be? Who should I be? Who should I be? And I don't even know if it was a person that said it to me, but the idea came: just be yourself.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks.
And as to say, I'll edit this and then get it back to you.
Sure.